every failed NHS interview is costing you between £5,000 and £7,500, and I can prove it in the next 60 seconds. I know that sounds like a lot, but hear me out, because this is one of those things that nobody in the NHS ever says out loud. My name's Samantha Dickinson. I'm a physiotherapist by background. Across my last 11 interviews, I've had an 82% success rate, going from band 5 to band 8 in just 9 years, versus a typical average of 14 years, or never in most cases when it comes to getting to the level of band 8. And over the past few years, I've had the privilege to coach clinicians across the UK, whether they're physiotherapists, occupational therapists, radiographers, junior doctors, nurses, student clinicians, through the exact system that I built to stop losing at interviews where I should have been winning. And here's the thing that will probably surprise you. Your clinical knowledge is not the reason that you're failing, and it never was. The reason is that nobody's ever taught you to perform under pressure. And that's a completely different skill to knowing your stuff. But let me just show you what happens when that skill actually gets trained and you can perform under pressure. Alex was a band 5 physio. She kept getting rejected for band 6 interviews. She was confident on the ward, she was good at her job, but that just fell apart in interviews. We worked on this together for 2 months, and she got that band 6 that she'd been chasing for over a year. Amy was an OT that was going for a role that was traditionally reserved for physios, and her imposter syndrome at some points was screaming at her to not even bother. But she went in and she blew them away, and she got the job that she deserved. And Carl was a band 6 physio. He was clinically brilliant, but he was absolutely terrified of interviews. 2 weeks working together, and he didn't just get the band 7, he was headhunted for a role that didn't even exist yet, and they made a job for him because they were so impressed by his performance, and he could actually show his true value, his true skill and his knowledge because he could perform under pressure. None of them actually lacked that clinical knowledge. They were all great at their jobs. They just fixed the bit that nobody had ever taught them, and everything changed. I know that this struggle is real because I've been exactly where you are now. Back in 2008, before my NHS career, I was working in financial services. 2008, financial crash, redundancy. I'd prepared really well for this job that I was going for. I knew my stuff inside out, 100% had the knowledge base there. Super confident before I went into that interview room. But as soon as I stepped into that interview room, it was literally like everything just fell apart. When I went in there and sat down, my heart was literally like racing. My mouth was super dry. My ears and cheeks just went bright red. And I just felt like a rabbit in the headlights, and that feeling was horrible. When they started asking me the questions, words literally just escaped me, and I wanted the room to just swallow me up. I could literally feel myself sounding desperate, but I just couldn't stop it. I can physically still remember that feeling when I walked out of that building and just felt absolutely embarrassed and just like, what the heck was that, Sam? Because I'd literally prepared for weeks. I knew everything inside out, all the competencies, everything that I needed to answer. Literally walked in feeling so good, and then my brain and mouth literally just felt disconnected. And you know that kind of word vomit sensation? Yeah, that definitely happened once the questions were coming, and I couldn't even tell you to this day half of the answers when I stepped out of that room because everything was such a blur. Once I got back to my car, I literally, at that point, promised myself that I would never let that happen again. And that was a pivotal moment for me because I had literally done everything that was suggested. I literally practiced all the questions, spoke them out loud, practiced in the mirror, practiced with my housemates. I read the company values and the mission statement, and I knew that until I could literally recite it in my sleep. But it still wasn't enough, because as I now know, practicing questions only sorts out about 30% of what the interview panel's actually scoring on. The other 70%, as I now know, links into your nervous system, your body language, your non-verbal tone, how you present yourself, how you actually handle those curveball questions when they come at you. Is it a cool, calm, collected response, or is it like a I now understand that it's how you make the panel feel in terms of whether or not they consider hiring you or not. And nobody trains any of that. So you literally do everything you're told to tick the boxes, and you still know when you walk out that the worst version of you showed up, and that is so frustrating. Particularly when you still watch someone that is less capable than you get the job that you deserved because you couldn't perform under pressure. That is soul destroying. And it's you that's getting that dreaded call to say, I'm sorry, there was just a better candidate on the day. And the feedback that they give you during that call just does not even match who you are. Everything they say, you know, oh, I do that. You just didn't prove it. And after that second or third rejection, you just stop telling people that you're even applying for interviews because you're pretty embarrassed at the lack of progress that you're getting. And that's when imposter syndrome generally starts to creep in, and you start wondering, am I good enough? I know that feeling, but I refuse to accept it, and I want to show you how to as well. So that pivotal interview is when I stopped asking the wrong question. Instead of how do I practice more questions, how do I find out what questions are going to come up, I started asking, why do people with less experience than me still outperform me in the interviews? And why am I seeing people that are more suitable for the job being passed over by people that I really wouldn't put in the job if I had to choose them? Specifically talking about NHS experience. What are they doing that you're not? And that's when I stopped asking the wrong question. The question of what questions are going to come up, what questions can I practice? And I started asking the right question. Why are the people with less experience getting promoted over me? How are they performing under pressure when they've got less knowledge? And when they've got less experience? How are they doing that? What are they doing that I am not? So I went deep into how to control that nervous energy, how to perform under pressure. I looked at the performance psychology papers and everything that I could watch possible. The psychology of performance, controlling that nervous system. And at that point, YouTube did not exist. So it was books, it was Google, because that was around. It was registering for courses and paying for people to actually tell me how to do it. And it wasn't in business, it was in personal development. And that is a $50 billion industry for a reason, because there is so much information to help you to step outside your comfort zone and actually get the things that you deserve. So I literally tested everything on myself, and that's why out of those 11 interviews, I've only failed at 2. And the 2 that I didn't get, I learned from. And what I built along the way became the pressure-proof interview method. And the 3 things that made the biggest difference the fastest for me, first was the freeze code, which impacts your nervous system regulation. Why does your brain go blank, and how to override it in just 60 seconds? Your body is literally redirecting the blood flow away from your brain centres that control analysis, language, thought, instead directing it to that fight, flight. Oh my Lord, we're under threat, we've got to run. How do you switch that off? How do you control that to perform under pressure, stay cool, calm and collected? The freeze code. Once you know how to switch that centre back on, you no longer look like a rabbit in the headlights. Second is the answer architecture. A simple structure example would be anchor, evidence and relevance. That literally helps to make every answer crisp, clear and structured so that you can recall it quickly and they understand what you're saying. No more rambling, no more forgetting the questions halfway through. And it works for any question, at any band, at any trust. And third is possibly the most overlooked, and it's the safe hire principle. Panels do not always pick the most competent candidate. They do pick the one that they feel safest putting into the role on Monday morning. And once you understand that and how to influence that, your whole approach changes for the better. So this isn't a generic question bank. There are thousands of combinations. You will never know which ones are coming up in your interview, apart from the standard ones, which you will get from us. And it's not a generic course either from somebody who's never stepped foot inside an NHS trust. because we know that healthcare is a bit of a different beast. This is a performance system built by a clinician for clinicians. Inside the system, tested on real interviews, not just me, other NHS clinicians, based on psychology and how you and the interview panel think. And it's definitely not just tips that you can Google in 5 minutes and understand what's going on. Nicola was a mature student nurse with a little bit of imposter syndrome, feeling like she was a bit too old and couldn't compete against the youngsters. Going for her first interview in years. Worked with us, had some rather wild connotations about body language. We worked on those. And she got her dream job in cardiology at her first interview. Sophie was a radiographer that had repeated application rejections after 9 months. So 8 weeks with us working on her application mastery and the pressure proof interview method, and she was invited to 3 interviews. She passed 2 and got to choose which one she wanted to work at. And Dr. Tom, he came in pretty sceptical. He literally thought that clinical knowledge was the mainstay, as we all do at some point in our careers. But 6 months later, he landed that GP training spot, and he admitted that he kind of completely misjudged what was necessary to perform an interview. These are regular clinicians. They are not gifted interviewers until now. But they just trained a skill that nobody ever taught them. But here's the thing though, NHS promotions and opportunities we know right now do not come up often, especially those band 6, 7 and 8s. And at some trusts, you're waiting 2 to 3 years or more for that role to open up again. We know in the NHS, if particularly at band 7, usually you're waiting for someone to retire or finally get a band 8 somewhere else and move on. So every time you go in underprepared, you are risking delaying your career progression and your pay rise by 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what level you're at. So have you worked out how much that could be costing you just with the delay? So with that in mind and the current job scarcity and competitive nature, what I've done is I've taken the full system, the same methodology that my coaching clients use, and they pay $2,500 for the full coaching system, and I've packaged it, the foundations, into 7 specific lessons, and it's called the band jumper. So what you're getting within the band jumper is the 70% that nobody teaches, the freeze code, the 5-second verdict, the safe hire, the answer architecture and the standout sheet, plus the £25,000 decision. 7 lessons, 7 downloadable tools, 1 complete system for your next NHS or private sector interview. My coaching clients pay anywhere between £700 to £2,500. And when a single band promotion is worth 5 to 7.5 grand, it's not the coaching that's expensive, it's missing out on that promotion that is. But the band jumper is not 2.5 grand, it is just £27. Why have I priced it so low? Because if you've seen my social media, you understand that I want to impact as many clinicians as positively as possible to help me with the ripple effect of positive impact on UK healthcare. If I price it at £27, I can achieve that because I can help a lot of you, because there's no barrier to entry with the money side of things. But make no mistake, I don't just want to help every clinician. I want this in the hands of clinicians that actually want to make a difference and want to make a difference to themselves as well as the patients that we care for. And because once I help you with the band jumper, you will see and trust that I can help you with the bigger picture, and some of you may want to get involved with the coaching programs. I'm obviously confident that this works, so what I'm willing to do is, if you go through the band jumper, apply everything that we teach, apply it to your next interview, and if you don't feel a genuine shift in terms of how you're approaching your next interview in the next 30 days, we will refund every penny. No questions asked. So look, at this point, you can keep doing what you've been doing. Practicing questions in the mirror, hope something lands differently next time. But if the last few interviews are anything to go by, what exactly is it that you're planning to change? And that's a key question. Or if you want to make sure that you definitely change your outcome, grab the band jumper for £27 today and spend the next month developing a completely different and effective approach. the freeze code, the answer architecture, the standout sheet. This is stuff that actually changes what happens when you sit down in front of that interview panel. And £27 is less of a takeaway for two. One sometimes when I'm ordering. But what's the cost of that other failed interview? We now know that that is potentially between £5,000 to £7,500. And for 2 more years, do the maths on that, 10 to 15 grand. So if you're ready for change, click below, get instant access to the band jumper today. And next time you walk into that interview room, you will be the one that they remember. But your competition might also be watching this right now. So it's decision time. Action takers and positive impact clinicians, I cannot wait to see you on the inside and help you start changing the trajectory of your career progression. Let's go, you've got this.